Hey guys, Brockshot here. Back with you with the next video in our series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Well, said Miss Havisham, and you have reared the boy with the intention of taking him for your apprentice. Is that so, Mr. Gargery? You know, Pip, replied Joe, as you and me were ever friends, and it will look forward to us to betwixt us, as being calculated to lead to larks. Not but what, Pip, if you had ever made objections to the business, such as its being open to black and soot, or such like, not but what they would have been attended to, don't you see? Has the boy, said Miss Havisham, ever made any objection? Does he like to trade? Which it is well beknown to yourself, Pip, returned Joe, strengthening his former mixture of argumentation, confidence, and politeness, that it were the wish of your own heart. I saw the idea suddenly break upon him that he would adapt his epitaph to the occasion, before he went on to say, and there weren't no objection on your part, and Pip, it were the great wish of your heart. It was quite in vain for me to endeavour to make him sensible that he ought to speak to Miss Havisham. The more I made faces and gestures to him to do it, the more confidential, argumentative, and polite he persisted in being to me. Have you brought his indentures with you? Asked Miss Havisham. Well, Pip, you know, replied Joe, as if that were a little unreasonable. You yourself see me put 'em in my and therefore you know as they are here, with which he took them out and gave them, not to Miss Havisham, but to me. I am afraid I was ashamed of the dear good fellow. I know I was ashamed of him. When I saw that Estella stood at the back of Miss Havisham's chair, and that her eyes laughed mischievously, I took the indentures out of his hand and gave them to Miss Havisham. Excuse me, the later part of that passage is supposed to be narrated and not in the voice of the character. It's supposed to be in my voice. Continuing on from here. You expected, said Miss Havisham, as she looked them over, no premium with the boy. Joe, I remonstrated, for he made no reply at all. Why don't you answer? Pip, returned Joe, cutting me short as if he were hurt. Which I mean to say, that were not a question requiring an answer betwixt yourself and me, and which you know the answer to be full well. No, you know it to be. No, Pip, and wherefore should I say it? Miss Havisham glanced at him, as if she understood what he really was, better than I had thought possible, seeing what he was there, and took up a little bag from the table beside her. Pip has earned a premium here, she said, and here it is. There are 25 guineas in this bag. Give it to your master, Pip. As if he were absolutely out of his mind with the wonder awakened in him by her strange figure and the strange room, Joe, even at this pass, persisted in addressing me. This is very liberal on your part, Pip, said Joe, and it is as such received and grateful welcome, though never looked for, far nor near, nowheres. And now, old chap, said Joe, conveying to me a sensation, first of burning and then of freezing, for I felt as if that familiar expression were applied to Miss Havisham. And now, old chap, may we do our duty. May you and me do our duty, both on us by one and another, and by them which your liberal present have conveyed to be, with the satisfaction of mind of them as never. Here Joe showed that he felt he had fallen into frightful difficulties, until he triumphantly rescued himself with the words, and far from myself, far be it. These words had such a round and convincing sound for him that he said them twice. Goodbye, Pip, said Miss Havisham. Let them out, Estella. Am I to come again, Miss Havisham? I asked. No. Gargery is your master now. Gargery. One word. Thus, calling him back as I went out of the door, I heard her say to Joe, in a distinct, emphatic voice, "The boy has been a good boy here, and that is his reward. Of course, as an honest man, you will expect no other and no more." How Joe got out of the room, I have never been able to determine, but I know that when he did get out, he was steadily proceeding upstairs, instead of coming down, and was deaf to all remonstrances until I went after him and laid hold of him. In another minute we were outside the gate, and it was locked, and Estella was gone. When we stood in the daylight alone again, Joe backed up against a wall and said to me, "Astonishing," and there he remained so long, saying, "Astonishing," at intervals so often, that I began to think his senses were never coming back. At length he prolonged his remark into, "Pip, I do assure you, this is as astonishing," and so, by degrees, became conversational and able to walk away. I have reason to think that Joe's intellects were brightened by the encounter they had passed through, and that on our way to Pumblechook's he invented a subtle and deep design. My reason is to be found in what took place in Mr. Pumblechook's parlor, where, on our presenting ourselves, my sister sat in conference with that detested seedsman. "Well," cried my sister, addressing us both at once, "and what's happened to you? I wonder you condescend to come back to such poor society as this. I am sure I do." "Miss Havisham," said Joe, with a fixed look at me, like an effort of remembrance, "made it a very particular that we should give her. Word compliments or respects, Pip?" "Compliments," I said. That were my own belief," answered Joe. "Her compliments to Mrs. J. Gargery." "Much good they'll do me," observed my sister, but rather gratified too. "And wishing," pursued Joe, with another fixed look at me, like another effort of remembrance, "that the state of Miss Havisham's health was sich as would have allowed, word, Pip?" "Of her having the pleasure," I added. "Of ladies' company," said Joe, and drew a long breath. "Well," cried my sister, with a mollified glance at Mr. Pumblechook, "she might have had the politeness to send that message at first, but it's better late than never." "And what did she give young Rantipole here?" "She give him said Joe. "Nothing." Mrs. Joe was going to break out, but Joe went on. "What she give?" said Joe. "She give to his friends, and by his friends," were her explanation. "I mean to the hands of his sister, Mrs. J. Gargery." Them were her words. "Them were her words, Mrs. J. Gargery. She mayn't have known," added Joe, with an appearance of reflection, "whether it was Joe or Jorge." My sister looked at Pumblechook. I think it's supposed to be George, excuse me. "Whether it were Joe or George." "Joe or George." My sister looked at Pumblechook, who smoothed the elbows of his wooden armchair and nodded at her and at the fire, as if he had known all about it beforehand. "And how much have you got?" asked my sister, laughing, positively laughing. "What would present company say to £10?" demanded Joe. "They'd say," returned my sister, curtly, "pretty well. Not too much, but pretty well." "It's more than that, then," said Joe. That fearful impostor, Pumblechook, immediately nodded and said, as he rubbed the arms of his chair, "It's more than that, Mum." "Why, you don't mean to say," began my sister. "Yes, I do, Mum," said Pumblechook. "But wait a bit. Go on, Joseph. Good in you. Go on." What would present company say?" proceeded Joe. "To £20. "Handsome would be the word," returned my sister. "Well, then," said Joe, "it's more than £20. That abject hypocrite, Pumblechook, nodded again, and said with a patronizing laugh, "It's more than that. Mum, good again. Follow her up, Joseph." "Then, to make an end of it," said Joe, delightedly handing the bag to my sister. It's 5 and 20 pound. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Helps. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.